It's blinking red.
We're good?
It should be.
Okay, great, thanks. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Jerry Jerns, N2GJ. I'm a new transplant to the land of entrapment here. Enchantment, that's right. I have been a ham since I was in high school, so that's back in 1965. I started out as a novice, 5 words a minute Morse code. Within a year, I had to upgrade to general or lose my license, right? So I got my 13 words a minute, got my general. And then it was quite a while before I got my advanced, and then upgraded to the extra in 1975. And at that time, the FCC was offering a new block of call signs that started with the letter N, rather than K or W at that time. So you could pick your call sign if you got your extras. So I did, got my initials, right? And been very active in various aspects of ham radio since then. I lived in New Jersey for a long time. My dad moved there. Western Electric moved in there in 1960. And when he retired in 1972, he moved out to Belen, New Mexico. And I would come out here and visit and stuff. And I kind of liked the place. You know, it's kind of a neat state, lots to do, lots to see. So when I retired back in 2016 from Oracle, I was there for 20 years. I decided to look for a place here. Found a place up here in Cottonwood Heights that I really fell in love with, and here I am. So this is the first club I joined, and I guess I threw some money at that the guys that have the repeater caravan thing or something. I threw some money at them because I use their repeaters. But this is really my joy here. Been doing QRP probably for 20 years. My first QRP radio was a Ten-Tech Century 21, they call it. Sounds like a real estate company, doesn't it? But been using a combination of homebrew equipment, kits that I built, and also commercial gear. I did bring a bunch of radios that I own for my collection here. So you can, touchy-feel it if you want later on. This is all commercial gear here. If anybody's interested, the Yaesu setup that's there, the backpack, all that stuff, power supply, is for sale. If anybody wants to float an offer, you're welcome to do that. So one of the suggestions that was made already this morning for my presentation is, instead of calling it why QRP, it was why not QRP? And I think that's a great suggestion. And I think I'm going to make that change before we put it up on the website. But why not QRP? But I'm going to try to give you some of the pros and cons of this mode, if you will, and just try to present a case that will get you interested in it. And I'll also try to share with you some of the potential pitfalls with this particular kind of operation. For example, just say right out of the box, if you're a brand new ham, this is probably not for you. Okay, frustration level can be very high. It's probably something that is more for somebody that's looking for a new challenge. Has been doing the same old thing for a long time. 100-watt commercial radio, a big tri-band beam up on the tower. Maybe you'd like to go up to the top of Capilla Peak with, a 2-watt radio and see what you can do on Morse code. So that's kind of the sort of theme of what the presentation is about. Please feel free if you have questions along the way to ask. I don't have a slide at the end that says questions. So QRP basically is, many of you that have been hams for a long time know that we have this thing called Q signals. Like CB had 10-4, right? We've got Q signals, QSL, QRT, QTH, and one of them is QRP. And it really can be expressed either as a statement or a question. As a statement, it says, reduce your power, right? QRP. Run your power down as much as you can. Or QRP with a question mark is, would you like me to lower my power? Or shall I lower my power? So it's just one of those Q signals. It's a shorthand instead of having to send in Morse code or type on a keyboard a whole big long sentence. You can reduce it down to a couple of letters. We typically call QRP 5 watts or less. There's a lot of variation on that. A lot of people that say, oh no, QRP is really 1 watt or less, or there's something we call QRPP. It's got a little subscript P, and that's like, we call it milliwatting. Okay, if you're a real glutton for punishment, you know, you crank down the power to about 200 milliwatts and see if you can work into the Marshall Islands. You know. But yeah, so 5 watts. So most of the commercial radios run how much? How much power most of the commercial radios?
100 watts.
About 100 watts, yeah. Some of the newer ones now, I see them coming out are 200 watts. Because of this big boat anchor. They're getting bigger now. Did you notice that? Some of these things are like boat anchors. But they're like a couple of 100 watts. So I was at Burning Man last year down in Black Rock City, Nevada. Anybody ever go to Burning Man?
Heard of it.
Have you heard of it? Okay.
Mhm.
Don't go there. No. It's very bad.
Crazy people.
It's crazy people, and I was, you know, my poor girlfriend got a terrible case of vertigo. We were both incredibly dehydrated. It's really bad. But at one point, she was in the van with me, and I had the ICOM IC706, which is a 100-watt radio, right? And I had a ham stick up on the roof of the van, and had the air conditioner going to kind of cool her body temperature down a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just try to make a contact. Well, she'd never seen ham radio before. So I call CQ, and this guy from Tokyo, Japan comes back. Yeah, and she says, Tokyo, like Japan? Yeah, for real. And I told her, I said, this radio puts out 100 watts, and you know what a 100-watt light bulb looks like. I said, can you imagine if I had a lamp here, and it was dark, and I turned on that lamp, and a guy in Tokyo, Japan could see the light from my lamp? I said, that's magic. Think about that. It's an incredible thing that we have here, this business of being able to send electromagnetic waves through the, you know, bouncing it off of the ionosphere, and pop, 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 and it gets to wherever it goes, right? And that's what it was. Now, so that's 100 watts. Now, instead of the 100-watt light bulb, let's use a little Christmas tree bulb instead. 3 watts, 5 watts, whatever. And it's really magic. It then gets really crazy, right? And people say to you, what, you're running 5 watts? Or you're running 3 watts? Whatever, you know, whatever you're running. Really? Is that possible? Yeah, it's not only possible, but believe it or not, there are people that actually get certificates like this. Look at this. 1,000 miles per watt. He worked all states. He used 67 watts total in the year 2000. 1.5 million miles per watt. Okay? And that's not so crazy. I mean, in fact, he's in Alaska, makes them kind of rare, and you know that might help, but whatever. And most of us know what Part 97 is, right? Everybody know what Part 97 is? So that's the rule book for ham radio, right? And there's actually a rule in there. It says that we're supposed to use as little power as we need to in order to maintain a reliable communication. And as we said, it's really open to interpretation for how reliable. But you know, you get these two guys with their big old Johnson Viking boat anchors, you know, and they're across town from each other. They're maybe, what, 2 miles. They've got the, you know, gigantic antennas all over, and they're talking to each other on AM, you know, with 1,500 watts. I mean, they sound great, but maybe not all you need for desired communication. So the thing about QRP is that you can use it when you want to use it, right? I mean, if you take a radio like this, believe it or not, this is called the Yellowcraft KX2. You stick an antenna, a whip antenna on this, and you can walk around like this on 20 meters worth of DX. 10-watt radio. You can put batteries inside of it. Completely portable. Completely portable. If you're a real glutton for punishment, you can go for something like this. Now this is actually just CW only. This is the Morse code. It's called the KX1. It's 4 bands, 80 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters, and 17 meters. 2 watts internal batteries. Double A's. Buy them at the drugstore, right? But anyway, talk about portability. Light, easy, simple equipment. If you like building things, there's all kinds of kits, or you can just go and scrounge parts yourself and build stuff for yourself. People design and build their own stuff all the time. Like I say, that backpack contains the entire Yaesu station, including this humongous 3-amp Radio Shack power supply that weighs about 10 pounds. I wouldn't take that backpacking with me, but that's a complete base and mobile station there on the table. And it's a lot of fun. A little bit about the math of QRP. Most people don't realize how little difference increasing your power makes. Okay, so for example, if I go from 5 watts to 100 watts, you say, oh man, I'm running 20 times the power. But no, you're not really, because it's a logarithmic scale. So it's 13 dB gain, and that's about 2 S units. So let's say you're talking to somebody, and they hear you with an S5, right? Their S meter goes to 5. And you, okay, I'm going to go from my 5 watts to 100 watts. Their meter is going to go from S5 to S7. But they can hear you perfectly okay at S5. S5 to S7. It's like nothing, right? So it doesn't make that much of a difference. In fact, there's a little example there. It says, they can hear you at one power level like that. A couple of S units isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. Now, if you're down in the mud, right, S1 with 100 watts, they're not going to hear you with 5 watts. Okay? Anybody here do digital modes? What was the most incredible thing you noticed about working digital modes? So one incredible thing. You tell me, and I'll tell you what my most incredible epiphany was.
Well, run real low power, and you'll get through.
You run really low power, you get through it. But that's not the thing that really blew my mind. How about over here? Yeah.
You actually, at the low signal strengths, can't hear it if you turn the audio up.
Exactly. That's the thing that blew
But
me away.
but it's giving me clear copy. I just copied their call sign and their signal report, and I can't even hear it.
Absolutely. So you're not able to hear the signal like you could hear a Morse code or sideband or whatever. You cannot hear the signal. It's so far down into the noise, okay, that you can't hear it with your ears. But sure enough, it's there on the waterfall. It's there in the software. Telling you the guy's call sign, signal report, all that good stuff. Grid squared, right? That to me, that was the most mind-boggling thing, right? And that's QRP. I ran a mode called Whisper. Anybody ever hear that? WSPR. It's a weak signal propagation reporting. It's one of the Joe Taylor software programs, and it's great. I would run a half a watt out of a Flex 1500, and I'd run the thing all night long. It's 24/7. And I was heard running a G5 RV up about 40 feet. I'd be heard in the Marshall Islands, Australia, New Zealand, every night, on 10 megahertz. Half a watt. So these are just some other stats. You could say, well, these are pretty old stats, and the bands were pretty good, and the bands kind of suck now. But this is, 2 years ago. I was running my KX3 on a battery that had been charged up with solar power. And I outscored the other 7 stations just using a MedFed lumbar. I had over 200 contacts. The other 7 stations total had about 100 contacts. Now, I was talking to Sam. So Sam has a KX3 like mine over here, and he's had some frustration, right? But he's using sideband. And I said, one of the things you probably really want to do if you're serious about QRP is to learn Morse code. Because when all else fails, like my little graphic up there, CW gets through. You can have all the fancy-dancy digital stuff and computers hooked up to the radio and linking repeaters through the internet and all that kind of stuff. It's all well and good, but when the stuff hits the fan, believe it or not, you know, I can sit there with my little Altoids tin transceiver running a watt and communicate with somebody across the Atlantic Ocean. So just as a general rule, we say that 5 watts of CW is equivalent in terms of talk power, if you will, to about 100 watts on Saturday. So what does this mean? Well, it means that a lot of people that are into QRP are also CW operators. And sometimes QRP is the thing that gets them the little kick in the butt to go and learn Morse code. Right? Say, okay, I pulled my hair out enough here trying to make this work. I'm going to learn Morse code. So, not hard to do. It gets a little bit harder as we get older to learn new things, but it can be done. You can also, you know, say, well, I don't want to spend money on a KX3 or an 817. You know what? Most radios, you can crank down the power to almost nothing. Doesn't matter what you have. A couple people here have ICOM 7000s. I used to run that QRP, 7000. Just crank it down. You can also use a step attenuator if you really are serious about this stuff. Again, one of the really cool things about QRP is that you can really get a lot of bang for your buck in a very small package. And those people that like to go up these, every week we have somebody in the club that does a SOTA, Summits on the Air operation. Some guys went out to the field, Elephant Butte Lake the other day. So you don't want to be dragging, you know, a 100-watt transceiver and a giant power supply and, you know, an inverter for your car so you can get AC out of the, you don't want to bother with all of that. So you can, you know, QRP really allows you to put a very tiny package together and have a power consumption that's very low. Some of these radios will operate, that KX3 will operate an entire week on a 7-amp gel cell. Done it many times in field day. This is just a little illustration I threw together. I said, well, if I took my Pro 3, which I sold at the tailgate, by the way, if I take that, about 20 pounds, an external tuner, a power supply, 50 pounds, I'm going to have to transport it in the trunk of my car. But if I take, you know, typical one of these QRP rigs, internal tuner, typically power supply or battery, throw it in a briefcase or backpack or whatever. And then the power budget, if you will, for the QRP radios is very low. The current draw on receive is extremely low. We're talking milliamps rather than amps. So here we have 67 amp hours. We need a car battery. Down here, maybe 3.5 amps. Most of the kits that you buy today are have super heterodyne receivers and multiple stages of filtering and amplification and so forth. And in QRP, we just have a rule. It's if you can hear it, you might be able to work it. Okay, if you hear it, but you got to be able to hear it first, right? So many of the QRP receivers, because of the simplicity, tend to outperform some of the bigger radios. They're even getting to the point now where we're putting SDR, software-defined radios, in packages the size of a small cube, and they don't even require a PC. I'll show you some pictures of that later on. Some of the hams like to build their own things, as I said. I don't know that anybody takes TV parts anymore and builds radios out of them, but I think one of the first radios I ever used was in our high school radio club. It had a single 807 tube in it. I think it was maybe 15 watts. And it was really cool because it could transmit on 40, 20, and 15 all at the same time. Yeah. How do I know that? Because Charlie, as we like to call her, the FCC said, yeah. Did you have a question?
No.
So anyway, lots and lots of designs, and because of the simplicity of it, I mean, some of these things are really amazing. There's one of the pictures I'll show you. It's called the Tuna Tin 40. It's basically using a tuna fish can, and it's got a round circuit board, and you put a dozen parts in it, and you hook it up to a 9-volt battery, and you got a 1-watt transmitter. Stupid simple. When that zombie apocalypse hits us, we'll be ready. Lots and lots of kits. This presentation has been around in various iterations for a long time, and one of the things I did was I spent almost a day just tracking down all the websites to make sure that they were still legitimate URLs and that the companies were still in business and this, that, and the other thing. So at least as of now, the information is up to date and correct. So when we post this on the club website, you'll have the links. It should be good. So again, lots of choices in terms of building. You can go out and find parts. There are a number of different companies like Mouser, for example, that will sell you small quantities of parts. Used to be you could go to a place called Radio Shack. Anybody remember Radio Shack? You know, it used to be a cell phone company. Or you can get a bag of parts and a board, or you can buy these complete kits. How many of you remember Heathkit? Okay, well, Heathkit had great kits, and the documentation on it was better than anything, right? Today, about the only company that could rival that is probably Elecraft. Elecraft's kits are pretty amazing, and the documentation is great. Of course, the most important part of any radio station is your antenna. Sam and I were commiserating about portable antennas, stealthy antennas. I live in an HOA development, and I'm trying to figure out how I can be stealthy and effective at the same time, right? Basically, this is actually a lie, where it says a radio hooked to a demi-load will hear nothing. I actually worked a friend of mine from my house in Kingston, New Jersey, the southern tip of Somerset County, about 40 miles away in Morristown. I didn't realize I had switched it into my Cantena, and I was in the basement of my house. So I had 100 watts into the Heathkit Cantena dummy load, and I talked to my friend George W2MTO up in Parsippany, New Jersey, 40 miles away, by accident. He said, you know, you don't sound as strong as you normally do. There's a good reason for that. But anyway, and by the way, antenna tuners, you know, we put so much faith in these things called antenna tuners. But you know what? All the antenna tuner does is say to the radio, you know what? You got a pretty good match here, and so don't bother to crank down the power, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that that antenna is resonant